Great. Well, thanks for logging on this morning and being here with us. And yeah, we're going to continue in our sermon series looking at God's big heart for the world and his plans and how we are included in those plans. And so we'll get into that shortly. Charlie, as you can see, is here with me today, and you might be here with me next week or the next week, but it might be over Zoom. So why don't you just share a little bit about what's going on in your life?
So of course this is going out into the internet and into the whole world. It's not just in our sort of church building here. But yeah, before I get into talking about myself, we were meeting this morning, and this is sort of family news, if you like. But just as we began to pray, I got a text that Heidi Dublin, her dad, passed away this morning. So our prayers with Heidi and Rod and the family, with Gabby and Zach and Sheila. It's a tender time, and it's not easy, obviously, with these COVID times. And I know they are not the only family who have been affected in this sort of way during this year. But our prayers are with you, Heidi, Rod, and the family, Gabby, Zach. Very much so. And it's similar, my father is in England, and this is why Landon started the way he did. I heard just over a week ago that my dad he's 98 years old. He's approaching end of life, and it hasn't been straightforward figuring out how to mesh Canadian COVID restrictions with UK COVID restrictions. I finally got it sorted out. But then there was another little hiccup, but I will be flying out to England in the next couple of days to see my dad. So our plan is, as we've talked, that we will Zoom together and record together No, you're going to be here with Ray next week.
But the following
The following week.
Yeah.
Yes, and I may be back by then, but I will be self-isolating, quarantine.
Yeah.
Hopefully all my tests will be negative.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we are looking at a great little passage. Some of you guys obviously have looked at it already. I know we looked at it as a youth group just the other night, and it's in Luke chapter 19, verse 1 to 10. And yeah, there's so much that we can talk about from this passage, but we won't. And I chatted about some different stuff from this passage with the youth this week, and I'm sharing with another church this weekend on the same passage, and we'll be talking about some other stuff. There's so much here, but we really want to be focusing around getting a hold of God's heart and having God's heart for our communities, for the people around us, and actually loving the world like he loves the world. And so we want to specifically be focusing in on that. Last week, our passage ended with Jesus challenging the disciples to look up and to see that there was a harvest that was white, that was ready, that was ripe. And Jesus wasn't talking about the fields of grain. He was talking about the people, the Samaritans that were coming out to see Jesus. And these were people that the disciples had just brushed shoulders with in the market and hadn't seen them as people that were ready, people that would be ready to receive what Jesus had come to give and to do. But Jesus saw them that way. And so we want to, again, in this passage, kind of be grappling with that idea of looking up and what do we see? Who do we see around us? So you can now hit pause and you can read Luke chapter 19, verse 1 to 10. And then you can rejoin us and we'll take a look at that together. All right. Well, I will hand it over to you, Charles. Why don't you get us rolling through this passage?
I will kick off. And like Landon's already said, there's so many pieces in here in this passage, and we're not going to cover them all, but we do want to just sort of say some things so that in your home setting, in your group setting, that you'll be able to talk about these things, and maybe we'll add a few little perspectives that you might not have seen on your own, but there's lots to see. So first off, right at the beginning, it says Jesus was passing through, and both Landon and I commented on this as we were talking with each other. There's picking up on stuff that we've talked about many times over these weeks preceding, but when Jesus gave in Matthew the Great Commission to the disciples, he said, go and make disciples. But that tense is go and as you're going. It's not go, get out of here and go and make. It's like go, and as you're going, make disciples. And this is exactly what we see Jesus doing here as he is passing through. As he's just about what he's about, something happens. He sees someone and he's engaged there. And there's this aspect of that's how we want to be as well, that as we are going, whether it's going to the shops, going to work, going for a walk, that we would have this same attitude, same heart that Jesus has here, where he's attentive even as he is going. He carries the heart of God. Yeah. And then there was a man, Zacchaeus. That's how it's put in the version that I was reading. There was a man, Zacchaeus. It just isn't captured in the English language or that translation. It's actually, lo, behold, there was a man. It's an attention gathering word that, as I say, in my translation, it just says, and there was a man. But it isn't. It's, and look, a man. Behold, a man. It's this drawing us to see something. Yeah. Later on, it says Zacchaeus stopped and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, look, Lord. Again, it's this attention seeking, but it's tied in with looking. Yeah. It's a seeing word if we get into the original language. And so much of these, there's 6 words here in this passage that are all tied in with seeing. Maybe you will have spotted them. And it's noteworthy because the passage before is all about a blind man. And he asks the Lord says to him, what would you have me do? And he says, I want to regain my sight. And Jesus says, receive your sight. And then he says, he received it, he regained his sight. And that same word used 3 times there is one of the words that is used here. And we're going to pick up some more on that. But let's have eyes to see. And the implication of it is that it could be quite easy to move through this and miss what we really should be seeing. Yeah. In fact, as we look through it, there are different points of view that are described here. Yeah. And we're going to pick up on that later, but it's right there, right at the beginning. Lo, look, behold, a man. Wow. And he's up a tree. This man, Zacchaeus. And again, many of you will be very familiar with what it says about this man and the implications. This man, Zacchaeus, was a chief tax collector. And tax collectors, I think, aren't necessarily that popular today. But back then, they were really, really, really unpopular because, again, I'm just going to skip through this because many of you will be very familiar with this. But as a tax collector, it meant that Zacchaeus was working for the Romans, the occupying army, the occupying people. So he was a collaborator, he was a traitor, and he was a chief traitor, a chief collaborator. He wasn't just, hey, I slipped up. Yeah. It's like, I'm really going for this. Yeah. I'm committed. I'm going to be, if there's a collaborator, I'm going to be the chief one amongst them. And as a result of all that, he became rich. And it's not just that he was a good, hard-working man, though probably and possibly he was a good man, a hard-working man. But he became rich because he profited from his own people, and profited not just collecting taxes and being paid a salary, but it would be that, and there are different understandings, there's different variations of how it might have worked, but he either took a cut, or he overcharged people, or he said, I won't charge you so much as long as you give me a bit of a backhander. I'll only charge you this much and send that on to the Romans, but the little bit you save, I want a part of that. One way or another, he made money through this, and he was not someone who people welcomed into their place. Most people would be quite offended with Zacchaeus, but not Jesus. So that's a starting point.
Tell us the one other thing about Zacchaeus. What was he doing in this passage?
That's right. And again, you might not see this depending on your translation. It says how Zacchaeus, in my translation, it says Zacchaeus was trying to see Jesus. But actually that word trying in the Aramaic is the same word that is used of Jesus. Zacchaeus was seeking to see Jesus. And we're told later on how the Son of Man, Jesus, has come to seek and to save the lost. And here we have at the beginning of the story one seeker walking through beyond Jericho, and here we have another seeker who is wanting to see this seeker, and this seeker sees this seeker, and the seekers meet. And there's something to chew upon there. People who have a heart to find God, God has got a heart to find people. And seekers meet seekers. And this is a story about a seeker meeting a seeker, but not everyone sees it that way.
Good. And I guess the other thing you forgot to mention about Zacchaeus is that he's a pretty short guy.
Oh, I thought you were going to, because why would I, a tall guy, pick up on that?
I love this passage because it gives a good place for short people like me in Jesus' world. But obviously Zacchaeus has a problem. He can't see Jesus because of the crowd, and we could talk lots about that. We could talk lots about this whole idea of how Zacchaeus tackles that problem in terms of running ahead, finding a tree. There's some really good stuff to chew on in there, but we want to camp around this idea of what are people seeing, and where are they looking? And so Zacchaeus he gets up into a tree and is waiting for Jesus to come by so that he can see him, because he wants to see who he is. Jesus does come by, and as Jesus walks beneath the tree or whatever, he looks up and he sees Zacchaeus. They lock eyes. They share this moment, and it's not just a passing glance and then moving on, but it's a look of intent. It's a look of actually receiving someone, of actually gazing and locking eyes. And there's something significant that happens in that moment. And I can imagine in a crowd full of people that are also watching. There's a lot of eyes. There's a lot of eyes in this story. But all the people from the crowd are also looking at Zacchaeus, probably thinking he's a fool for climbing a tree. But they're also looking, I think, at Jesus as Zacchaeus and Jesus meet eyes and lock eyes. And I can imagine a lot of the people in the crowd are thinking, okay, here's the moment where Jesus is just going to tear a strip off of Zacchaeus. And I imagine they were quite shocked when they heard what came out of Jesus' mouth. And when Jesus said Zacchaeus and called him by name, but then said, come down from that tree, maybe they were thinking, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like Jesus is upset that he's up in this tree, but the next part, where Jesus says to him, I have to,
Hurry down.
yeah, hurry down. I have to spend time with you and eat with you in your house. I imagine that jaws dropped throughout that crowd, because that's not at all, I think, what they would be seeing. That's not at all what they would be expecting to happen. And it tells us that the crowd actually begins to murmur, to grumble, to complain, when they saw it, when they saw this happen. And they're not just grumbling about Zacchaeus. It actually says that they're grumbling about both Zacchaeus and Jesus. They're grumbling that Zacchaeus, that Jesus would even entertain the idea of spending time with Zacchaeus. And they're grumbling about Zacchaeus because he's Zacchaeus, because he's this chief tax collector. He's this terrible sinner in their eyes. And it's crazy, because it's all like it's one story, but being seen through all, like you said, through these different perspectives, through these different eyes. And this moment says for Zacchaeus, he was filled with just such great joy out of this. he's overflowing with joy, and because Jesus has received him, and I think we would be right to assume that Jesus also was filled with such great joy from this experience. They're all seeing the same thing, but there's this crowd that through their eyes, what they're seeing is actually something that's very displeasing to them, and it's something that they even grumble and complain about to one another. And it makes me think of, even as you and I were talking, Charlie, you're just saying how this almost is like just a real life story comparison of Luke 15, the prodigal son, where you have the son return, and he's seeking to come back to the father. You have the father who receives him, but then you have the older brother, or in this story, the crowd, who is actually not wanting to celebrate. This is not something that is worth celebrating for them. It doesn't bring them joy. It's something that they actually they struggle to believe that there's anything good about this situation at all. Just like the older brother really missed the joy that the father had in seeing his son return. And so, yeah, it just shows us that the same situation can just be seen in so many different from so many different perspectives, depending on what type of eyes we have. Do we see things like Jesus does, or do we see things like the crowd does? Anything to add, or anything to
well,
take
I've
from that?
got a bundle of thoughts about the whole seeing stuff.
Yeah, go for it.
And this aspect, even just listening and thinking about it, this aspect of how Luke tells the story, I've already said it, about how he says, in the telling, he's saying, look, a man, Zacchaeus. And I loved how, fitting that in with how you describe, Jesus and Zacchaeus, their eyes lock. Because this isn't just a physical person meeting a physical person. There's something spiritual, there's something of God here. How does Jesus know this man's name, Zacchaeus?
Right.
And the way Luke tells the story, it's like, we're just passing through, but look, there's this man, Zacchaeus. And it's almost as though you're caught up in how the Holy Spirit would have been speaking to Jesus, saying, there's a man here, Zacchaeus. Oh, up there. And there's this spiritual meeting.
Yeah.
And it just, the different ways of seeing, there's comfort in seeing ourselves and there's challenge in seeing ourselves in this story, of seeing ourselves like Zacchaeus, of where we might be, but God knows where we might be. And God is, there's a conversation going on amongst God, and Jesus, it says, is interceding for us. He knows us by name, and he knows Landon, he knows Charlie, and he knows Heidi. He knows us, and he's wanting to meet with us.
Yeah.
He's attentive. And there's great comfort in that. Maybe as we read this story, we see comfort in this knowledge that God has of us. He knows us by name. He knows the numbers of hairs on our head. He knows the number of days of our lives. He knows us. I'm known. And then identifying with Zacchaeus in the sense of Zacchaeus wanting to see Jesus and struggling, and then being determined and doing something about it. The intentionality of him going ahead, running ahead, hurrying ahead, and then meeting Jesus. And maybe we can identify in this story by looking at it that way, that, I have done it. I want to do it again. I want to get up in the morning before anything else and spend time with Jesus. I want to get home in the evening after the kids have gone to bed. I want to spend time with Jesus. As I drive, I want to put on some worship music and spend time with Jesus. And great comfort in that knowing that as I am seeking him, he will seek me.
Yeah.
There's great comfort and encouragement. Or maybe we can see ourselves in the crowd of being offended. Landon and I were trying to think of who are the equivalents in today's society of someone like Zacchaeus. And I'll let you come up with your ideas. We found it hard to find the same sort of character or the same sort of place of being a traitor to the people, but of buying into the system and getting rich from something corrupt. And I know not all lawyers are corrupt, but there's this aspect of, there's the truth, but I'm just going to argue this point of view, and this one's going to argue this point of view, and we're just going to make money out of arguments. And I know there are places and times where we are very, very grateful for the services that a lawyer brings. And I know, I do know some lawyers, and they're good people, the people that I know. But there's this characterization of, if you get into litigation, the only people who are going to make money from it are the lawyers. And there's this aspect of tax collectors. The only people who are going to really make money, well, the Romans will, but the tax collectors will make money from it. But maybe we'd be offended by some of these people who just seem to be buying into a corrupt system, who make money from it. And we'd be offended if they started coming to our church, or somehow if God seemed to meet with them with favor before meeting with me. Maybe there's some challenge there. And then there's this idea of seeing Zacchaeus the way Jesus saw Zacchaeus, with the heart of God and with the eyes of faith that saw beyond what the crowd saw, but saw someone who was seeking God, seeking peace. And there's more to say about this. Maybe it's, the identification of ourselves with the heart of God that is in Jesus. Maybe that's the main place that we want to land in this. Not seeing ourselves in Zacchaeus, not seeing ourselves in the crowd, but seeing ourselves as one like Jesus who, as he was going, carried this purpose to seek and to save that which was lost, to join in with the ministry of reconciliation. I'm quoting from a different passage.
And I think what you said earlier about how seekers find seekers, right? And I think that's one of the big things I've been learning, and from talking to other people, that a lot of us have been learning in this last year is actually there's a lot of people out there that are seeking Jesus. And as I've been growing and others have been growing and lots of us have been growing and thinking, okay, God, well, help me seek those people out, we actually start seeing them. Where before we can be like, from the passage last week, we can be the disciples that just went into a village full of people, and we're primarily just thinking about getting food or getting some sort of service, accomplishing some sort of task, brush shoulder with a bunch of people, but don't actually see them the way Jesus does. Where then Jesus sees them coming out from the village and says, hey, these people are ready. The disciples totally missed it. And I think for a lot of us, we're realizing, man, like, I've missed it in the past because I wasn't seeking, because I wasn't like you're talking about, I wasn't associating really with Jesus. I wasn't really associating with his heart for the world. But as we begin that, and God opens up our heart to love the people around us and actually be seeking to have relationship with them. And I love how even just, it's like Jesus was seeking to have a meal with Zacchaeus, right? It just starts with that type of relationship, having a meal, spending time, inviting people over to your home, going golfing with someone, something like that. But as we open up our heart to people in that way, we actually see that they're seeking, and that there is a desire in people's hearts to know God, to be living with a sense of purpose and belonging, and to know that there's a God who made them, who knows them, who loves them. And yeah, I think I'm just realizing there's actually a lot of people out there that are seeking, where before I might have been tempted to think that there's not that many. Now actually I think there's tons and tons. And so as we grow in being like Jesus in this passage, where yeah, he's going, he has a mission, he's headed to Jerusalem, and it's an important mission. He's going to die on the cross for our sins, but he's still seeking to save the lost, and in a very practical, real, relevant, day by day way. And that in this story is Zacchaeus, and so he meets with Zacchaeus, and he doesn't miss that opportunity. And I think we want to be growing in that as well.
Yeah.
To be, as we go throughout our day, that we're going with purpose, and it's to seek out those who are seeking the Father.
Yeah. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. As Landon was speaking, I was chewing further on what is the equivalent of tax collectors and stuff, because I was thinking, I feel like I've been very unfair towards lawyers, and I thought, first off, maybe a good equivalent are pastors, because talking with people, real, regular people out in the world, a number of conversations I've been part of myself recently, but heard from other people are, people expressing the offense they have with the church because of how people in the church, pastors, have behaved. And so, or maybe it's just really about where we've experienced offense.
Yeah, I think that's it.
I think as a kid, at some point in my life, I'd have just found it very challenging to think of God really favoring my parents.
Yeah.
Or if you get ripped off by if you get ripped off by a particular trade or whatever, you just think, those people.
Yeah. Totally.
But to know that God sees through all of those things to the heart of someone.
Yeah.
And like you say, I think we would be surprised at how many people out there who we would judge as being either offensive or offended with us, or we could be offended with them, but actually have a heart for God.
Yeah.
And that God most definitely has a heart for them.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so over to you guys, I think, to be chatting and to be thinking, to be praying, to be writing some stuff down. What did stand out to you as you read and as we shared about Jesus? What stood out to you about the crowd or about Zacchaeus? Can you relate to any of those things? What's God asking you to do this week? And who could you share this story with? I bet there's some people in your life that would be challenged by this. It's just a beautiful picture of Jesus. It's a beautiful picture of just how he doesn't count people out. that if people are honest and real and are seeking him, he doesn't count them out. So I imagine that could be very encouraging to a lot of people in our lives. So challenge you to share that. And but yeah, what specifically is God stirring in your heart? And yeah, what's the step of obedience he wants you to take this week in that? So we'll leave that with you, and share those things with each other in your home now, and go a little deeper into the passage together. But yeah, why don't I close in prayer? That'd be good. Okay. God, thanks for this time, and thanks again that you're just continuing to speak to us and encourage us, and that's happening in small little groups. That's happening in these times. That's happening as people go for walks. I know lots of people are starting to get out and meet in parks and go for walks and connect with one another. And I just pray that those times would continue to be filled with life and be centered around you and around, all that you are doing in our lives. And thank you that you're teaching us to be sharing your heart. And we want to continue to grow in that. Lord, bless Heidi and Rod and their family. Bless Charlie and Judy and their family, and others who are going through similar times of sorrow and challenge. Help us walk well in the midst of that, and comfort us because we definitely need it. And so, we love you, Jesus, and we thank you for this time together. Amen.
Amen.
Great. Well, Ray and I will see you guys next week, and enjoy the sunshine. And we'll see you later. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
Bless you.